The depths of horror, a scuba diving tragedy in the Thailand Sea. The sun was setting over the pristine waters of the Thailand Sea, casting a golden glow over the small island of Koh Tao, a haven for scuba divers and snorkelers. A group of 10 amateur divers, all friends from college, had gathered here for a week-long diving adventure. They were eager to explore the vibrant coral reefs and marine life that Thailand was famous for. The group, led by Alex, a certified dive master, had rented a private boat and hired a local guide, Kiet, who knew the waters like the back of his hand. The excitement was palpable as they set off early in the morning, their dive gear meticulously checked and double-checked. Their destination was the infamous Sail Rock, a submerged pinnacle known for its strong currents and diverse marine life. As they arrived at the site, Keat briefed them on the dive plan: a 20-meter descent, a 30-minute bottom time, and a slow ascent to avoid decompression sickness. The group descended into the crystal-clear waters, their bubbles rising like a trail of silver beads to the surface. The dive was surreal, with schools of blue tang and angelfish darting around them. However, as they approached the midpoint of their dive, a sudden change in the current caught them off guard. Strong eddies began to pull the divers apart, making it difficult for them to stay together. Alex signaled for everyone to regroup, but in the chaos, one of the divers, Sarah, was swept away by the current. Her panic was evident as she struggled to swim against the powerful water. "Stay calm, Sarah, follow the current, and we'll meet you at the surface," Alex shouted through his regulator, but his words were lost in the din of the underwater turmoil. As the group fought to reunite, they realized that another diver, Mike, was missing. A frantic search ensued, but the visibility was decreasing due to the stirred-up sediment. The currents grew stronger, making every movement a struggle. In the midst of this chaos, one of the divers, Emily, experienced a sudden onset of decompression sickness. She clutched her arm in pain, her eyes wide with fear. "DCS!" she managed to signal, her voice muffled by the regulator. Keat quickly assessed the situation and decided to ascend immediately, but the group was scattered, and some were too far away to follow. As they began their hasty ascent, they encountered another horror: a swarm of venomous box jellyfish, their translucent bodies glowing ominously in the fading light. The jellyfish stung several divers, causing excruciating pain and further panic. The group was now in complete disarray, each diver fighting for survival. Alex and Kiet tried to maintain order, but it was a losing battle. As they broke through the surface, the group found themselves dispersed over a wide area. The boat was nowhere in sight, and the darkness was closing in fast. The once clear waters were now a nightmare, with the currents still strong and the jellyfish lingering beneath. One by one, the divers began to succumb to their injuries and exhaustion. Emily's DCS worsened, and she slipped into unconsciousness. Mike was never found, and it was assumed he had been swept away by the current or succumbed to the depths. Sarah, who had been separated early in the dive, was spotted clinging to a piece of debris, her eyes vacant and her body limp. Alex and Keat swam to her, but it was too late. She had drowned, her body a victim of the merciless sea. As the night deepened, the survivors clung to each other, their lights flickering weakly in the darkness. They were adrift, miles from any land, with no sign of rescue in sight. Hours turned into an eternity as they waited, their bodies battered by the relentless waves. The jellyfish stings continued to cause agony, and the fear of being consumed by the sea was palpable. In the early hours of the morning, a faint light appeared on the horizon. A rescue boat, alerted by the emergency beacon they had activated before the dive. The survivors were pulled aboard, exhausted and traumatized. As they sailed back to Koh Tao, the group was met with silence and grief. They had set out on an adventure, but returned with a tragedy that would haunt them forever. The Thailand Sea, once a paradise, had become a graveyard for their friends. The incident would later be investigated, revealing a combination of factors that led to the disaster: the strong currents, the box jellyfish, and perhaps most critically, the group's lack of experience and preparation for such challenging conditions. The survivors would never forget the horror they endured that night, a stark reminder of the sea's power and the dangers that lurked beneath its serene surface. For them, the ocean would never be the same again. its beauty now tinged with the memory of their lost friends and the terror they faced in its depths. In the end, only 5 of the 10 divers returned, each bearing scars, both physical and emotional. The tragedy at Sail Rock would become a cautionary tale, a reminder to all divers of the importance of respect, training, and caution when venturing into the unpredictable world beneath the waves. The depths of despair. It was a calm evening as the ocean liner Aurora Queen glided through the vast, azure waters of the Atlantic, her lights twinkling like stars against the darkening sky. Passengers strolled along the deck, laughter mingling with the sound of crashing waves. The ship was a floating city, filled with families, couples, and adventurers, all seeking the thrill of the sea. Captain Elias Grant, a seasoned mariner with over 30 years of experience, stood at the helm, surveying the horizon. He had seen storms that could turn a mighty vessel into splinters, but the forecast for this voyage promised smooth sailing. Confidence radiated from him, a pillar of strength that reassured the crew and passengers alike. Yet as night descended, so did an eerie fog, creeping slowly over the water like a shroud. It was thick and damp, swallowing the light from the ship's navigational beacons. The once vibrant sounds of laughter and music diminished, replaced by an unsettling silence. "Captain, we're crossing into a fog bank," called First Mate Jamie Harper, her brow furrowed with concern. "Visibility is dropping." "Maintain our course," Elias replied, though a hint of unease settled in his stomach. He had traversed fog before, but each time it brought with it palpable dread. "Keep the engine steady." As the ship slipped deeper into the mist, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavier. An unnatural chill settled in. Passengers began to retreat indoors, leaving the deck eerily quiet. Elias felt an instinctual warning gnaw at him, a voice whispering that something was amiss. Suddenly, a piercing shriek echoed through the fog, followed by a loud crash that reverberated through the ship. The Aurora Queen shuddered violently, throwing passengers and crew to the ground. Panic erupted as the ship began to tilt precariously to one side. "Man overboard!" someone shouted, but Elias was too focused on regaining control. "Secure the lifeboats!" he commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. The ship continued to list, the sound of groaning metal filling the air. Jamie raced to the control panel, frantically assessing the damage. "We've hit something, Captain. The hull is compromised." Elias felt the color drain from his face. "What do you mean compromised? Water is flooding in. We need to evacuate." With a quick glance at the frantic faces of the passengers, Elias made his decision. "All hands on deck. Prepare to abandon ship." As the crew worked to launch the lifeboats, the reality of their situation dawned on everyone. The Aurora Queen was no longer a vessel of safety, but a looming tomb, a predator ready to swallow them whole. "Please, we can't leave," cried a woman clutching her child. Desperation etched into her features. "What if we can fix it?" "There's no time," Jamie yelled, shoving the lifeboat into the water. "We have to go now." Passengers scrambled to the life rafts, the sound of their frantic movements drowned by the roar of the sea. Elias couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, a malevolent presence lurking just beyond the fog. He looked over the railing, catching a glimpse of something dark and immense beneath the waves, but the fog quickly swallowed it back into the depths. As the last lifeboat descended, Elias turned to Jamie. "We can't save everyone. We have to make sure some get out safely." "I understand," she replied, her voice trembling, "but we can't stay much longer." With heavy hearts, they began ushering people into the remaining boats, the cries of despair echoing in the thickening fog. The ship tilted further, sending a surge of water rushing toward them. Just as Elias was about to climb into a lifeboat himself, a violent tremor shook the ship, and the lights flickered ominously. The Aurora Queen let out a deafening groan as she began her descent. Water surged over the deck, swallowing everything in its path. Panic intensified as the remaining passengers scrambled for safety. The ship's final cries echoed through the night, and with a final, shuddering gasp, she capsized. Elias felt himself being pulled under, the cold water enveloping him like a vice. Instinct kicked in, and he fought against the darkness, clawing his way back to the surface. As he broke through, he gasped for air, disoriented and terrified. All around him, chaos reigned. Flashes of light from distress signals illuminated the fog, and cries for help filled the air. "Captain!" Jamie's voice pierced through the commotion. He turned to see her clinging to a piece of debris, her eyes wide with fear. He swam toward her, the icy water numbing his limbs. "Grab on!" he yelled, helping her onto the floating wreckage. The two of them clung to the remnants of the Aurora Queen, watching in horror as the ship sank into the abyss, the once grand vessel swallowed by the sea. As the minutes turned into hours, the fog began to lift slightly, revealing the vastness of the ocean. As the minutes turned into hours, the fog began to lift slightly, revealing the vastness of the ocean. They were surrounded by scattered debris and the distant cries of survivors, each one echoing a desperation that clawed at Elias's heart. He scanned the horizon, searching for signs of rescue, but the vastness of the ocean offered nothing but despair. "Do you think anyone else made it?" Jamie asked, her voice shaking. "I don't know," Elias replied, his throat dry. "We have to stay together. Help will come." But as the night wore on, their hope dwindled. The cold seeped into their bones, and exhaustion threatened to consume them. Elias's mind wandered to the passengers they couldn't save, the lives that had depended on him. Guilt twisted in his stomach, a heavy anchor pulling him down. Then came the whispers, soft at first, barely audible, like the gentle lapping of waves. But they grew louder, turning into guttural sounds, chilling and menacing. Elias felt a shiver crawl down his spine. "Do you hear that?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Jamie nodded, her eyes wide with terror. "What is it?" "I don't know," he replied, his heart racing. "But it's not.